Well, good morning again, everyone. Today is the Saturday, the 31st of August. Can you believe it? The last day of the month and the last day of South Africa's Women's Month. And we're moving definitely into spring, noticing how the weather has changed and the cold and all that lovely stuff. So it is my great pleasure again this morning to welcome and introduce you to Bobby Hammond again. Thank you, Bob, for being here. Bobby is firstly a registered pharmacist who has worked in the field of pharmaceutical testing. He's also a qualified, accredited professional health coach, and this qualification is recognized internationally, as he has done his training through an accredited UK training organization. This always astonishes me. He has also done 15 half Ironman races and 2 full Ironman races, and is currently racing in the top 3 in his age group of 60 to 64 nationally for triathlon. And best of all, he's been a user and a distributor of the Neolife products, which he loves, recommending them to his clients for many, many years. So without much more ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Bobby.
Thanks very much, Monica. And I'm just going to share my screen. But what I wanted to do before I start is just share, and relating also to the circadian rhythm, just looking at some of this stuff. I mean, this is the kind of first light that we get to see here in the morning, and so many people actually miss out. Can you guys see the screen all right?
Yes, magic.
Okay. Then on that same day, followed by the sun coming out. So, just to show you how beautiful it is. And, coming back on one of the bicycle rides the other day, it was quite incredible, just talking about how many people actually miss out on this kind of stuff and don't get to see this. We get to see it as we're coming back. We're seeing the sunrise. So just amazing how beautiful it is. So, yeah, just this whole thing about the circadian rhythm, which I think, a lot of people have heard the term and they don't really recognize or understand how important it is in our life, and how, you'll get a gist of how important it is when you travel and you see, you end up with the, jet lag and that kind of thing, and it's pretty much related to that, and we'll explain a little bit of as we go through this, looking at the circadian rhythm and where this term circadian rhythm comes from. Is this circadian, so around the day, and it's controlled through an area within the hypothalamus, which is this little blue area at the bottom here. And then the most important thing is this little suprachiasmatic nucleus, which we'll talk about as the SCN, little green thing at the bottom there, which, as tiny as it is, but as how important that is, we'll get to understand as we go through this. So, this circadian rhythm is controlled by this SCN, which sits in the hypothalamus, and it's basically the body's central clock, and all other clocks in our body work subordinate to this central clock in our body. It moderates, there's the hypothalamus area, it moderates many of our bodily functions, including our hunger, thirst, procreation, and also it's the master metabolic regulator and thermostat in the body. And you'll understand a little bit later through the discussion why that is so important and the impact that it has in terms of our sleep and also our health and our weight particularly. The circadian rhythm actually entrains to the environment. So, what's happening, and that's why I showed you the sunrise at the beginning. That sunrise that you see in the morning, it is actually really important for us to get to that and have access to what we call the bright blue light of the sun to start most of our body's activities in the day. And it's picked up by these special retinal cells that we have in our eye, which contain a protein called melanopsin, and they're not there for sight. They're there for the process of moderating and ensuring that we have this circadian rhythm. We pick up that blue light from the sun early in the morning, and it begins the release of things like different hormones in our body, which are important for our digestion and just for our body to get going. Things like the cortisol, testosterone, starts the gastric processes in the morning, and we all know about the routines that we have in the morning with the bowel movements, etc. Many of the other activities that start through the day, and this circadian rhythm sets the daily clock, and it's important that we get this exposure, sort of at least a minimum of around about 30 minutes of 1,000 lux, which is just basic daylight and what we get coming through the sun. And that's what gets these melanopsin cells going, which then helps us entrain and work to our circadian rhythm, which is what's healthy for us. And as we age, we become less sensitive to the light. And by the age of 45, we basically have half the light sensing ability of our little younger 10-year-olds as we were then. And that can actually interfere quite a lot with the circadian rhythm. And it may then be necessary as we get older, instead of just the 30 minutes, we may need to be exposed to a little bit more daylight to be able to get the same effect that we had to start off with. And if you just think about it, on average, 93% of the time through our day, we're actually exposed to artificial light. And I'm sure everyone heard about issues within like the UK and places like that, where they get very little light and they're exposed to these really drab conditions, and they end up with all sorts of, emotional, psychological issues related to that. And it's all related to the circadian rhythm, which is so important. And, with us being exposed to this artificial light, we can end up being pretty much jet lagged a lot of the time if we don't move into proper circadian rhythms and try and moderate and entrain our circadian rhythm to our best benefit at the end of the day. When the sun sets, our SCN actually then causes the pineal gland to produce melatonin. And I'm sure we've all heard about melatonin and maybe don't realize how important this thing at the end of our day is. As in the ancient times, basically people would get up with the sun, so you get the benefit of the sun in the morning, go through the day, and then as the night sets, we didn't have all the lights around us and the cell phones and devices, etc. And we actually then were exposed to the dimming of the light, the softer lights, and that's what in actual fact encourages being exposed to that, causes the melatonin to be produced, which we'll talk about is how important that is. If we are exposed to bright lights and we don't do something about that later in our day, it actually ends up interfering with our circadian rhythm, and that can have an impact both on our sleep, our general health, and also our weight, as I'll explain a little bit as we're going through. So with melatonin, which comes out in response to the dimming of the lights at night and the slowing down of things at the end of the day, is something that actually does a lot of things which you don't realize. It decreases inflammation in our body, it reduces the oxidative stress, which is important for aging and for disease, etc. It helps with blood sugar control. It reduces indicators for heart disease, so we can be healthier if we do these things properly and get into proper circadian rhythms. It works with this thing called autophagy, which is really important, and also from a perspective of cancer, because autophagy, if it's done properly, it's the recycling of old unhealthy cells, and we have to have that process in our body where we get rid of those old unhealthy cells. And if we're not doing things right, we end up increasing our risk of sickness and things like exposure to cancer as well. So it's really important for our cellular health and longevity. And just a product you can remember here, obviously, is the TNN is a very important thing for cellular health in our life, and it can obviously aid this. Other things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, our circadian rhythm, and you'll find with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease and other cognitive diseases, is that their circadian rhythm is very often disrupted, and it leads to things like the damaged DNA, and that is unhealthy for us at the end of the day. With melatonin and ensuring we get enough through our sleep at night, it improves our DNA repair. So it slows that whole aging process down at the end of the day. Just two things you can remember as far as the neo-life is concerned as well. Always remember how important magnesium is to get a good night's rest. Very often you'll find people can use magnesium instead of many of these other drugs just to get a good night's rest. And of course, omega-3 is important from an anti-inflammatory perspective, and also for reduction of risk to these cognitive diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So lack of proper sleep actually causes and speeds up aging. It speeds up brain decay, and also exposes us to the risk of tumor development. And what they found in a number of these studies that, shift workers very often run the risk of being exposed to certain types of tumors. And they've linked it to this whole thing in terms of their circadian rhythm and how it's being put out and how it impacts on sleep and weight and the sugar or the carb control at the end of the day. Also, things that we don't generally think too much about. The important thing, though, is that, if we do the right things and we, at the end of our day, ensure that we are exposed to lower lights, we don't expose ourselves to the bright light, and we enable ourselves to prepare for good sleep, our brain can actually produce enough melatonin on its own, and it's not necessary always to supplement with it if we do the right things. If we don't, supplementation may be a good thing to do. So we need to develop a healthy circadian rhythm to ensure this natural melatonin production, and also things like we need to limit caffeine. And I know I've put there the time of latest 4 p.m. in the day. Generally suggest that you try and stick for 2 p.m. because the increased caffeine can have the same effect on your circadian rhythm as having too much bright blue light late at night. We can also do things like, use, they have produced now blue light blocking glasses so that you in fact reduce the amount of blue light that you're getting in, and it's these amber glasses that they use. Also, we can use low lighting and amber lighting in our houses in the evening, turn down the brightness on our devices, use the night shift app on your cell phones and TV, just turn down the brightness of the TV. And the other things that we can do to improve this as well is that just make sure our eye health is good by making sure we take in, or we have sufficient lutein and zeaxanthin, which reduces eye strain, fatigue, and headaches due to the exposure to bright lights and the devices that we are. It also improves our sleep quality, and we can get lutein and zeaxanthin from things like kale, spinach, avocado, pastured eggs, egg yolks, and also orange vegetables. The other thing that we can do is make sure that we take sufficient vitamin A foods, which work with the melanopsin, and which is a vitamin A based protein, things like liver, salmon, trout, eggs, mackerel, orange colored vegetables. And if we look at some of the Neolife products, things like the carotenoid complex, we must remember, contains that. Pro Vitality contains it. And then, of course, we have the vitamin A and D in our range, which can all help to improve the melanopsin and the quality of our sleep at the end of the day. So some of the tips to have better rest at night and recovery, and these are evidence-based things where we need to look at things like sticking to a schedule of sleep, same time to bed each evening and same time to rise, even with holiday period time and on weekends. I know that it's a thing that you take time every now and again out and don't stick to these things, but on the whole it's advised to do that, because that's what in actual fact make sure that you have a good night's rest and you recover properly and you do your body the best service you possibly can. Get your daily exercise and get that sun exposure, and both of these help you to sleep better. Having that, even that simple thing, setting up your sleep by getting up early in the morning and getting sufficient sun is really important, and something that we should be doing. I know I've put here shortening your afternoon nap. We recommend, in fact, that you don't afternoon nap, only if you absolutely need to. Don't do it after 3 p.m. because what happens then is that you generally are not going to sleep very well, and that sleep is so important. Put your cell phone on quiet when you go to bed. In fact, if you can, rather keep it away from the bed. I, in fact, don't keep or charge my cell phone in the room. It's out of my room. It's somewhere else so that I don't get disturbed by it, and also both by the light. A lot of people sleep with these things next to the bed. It's the worst thing you can actually, in actual fact, do. There are better ways to find alarm clocks instead of using our cell phones. We also need to prepare for bed by slowing down at night, maybe reading something, dimming the lights around us, avoiding TV and exposure to cell phones and other devices like computers before we go to bed, because that bright light is not helping the melatonin, and it reduces it sometimes by an amount of almost 58%. So it is really important to try and prepare properly for bed. We need to set up about an hour and a half before we go to bed, so that when you do go to bed, you're ready for a good night's rest. Some of the other tips is avoid alcohol before going to bed. You know, a lot of people think that alcohol actually, it may help you get to sleep, but it has no good effect on your quality of sleep. So one should avoid that as much as possible, as well as any caffeine or other types of stimulants, you know, later than mid-afternoon. Try and also not eat large meals at night, at least 1.5 hours before bed. And don't drink fluids late at night. It's just going to mean that you're going to need to get up early to go to the loo, and that's not a good thing. Don't exercise, specifically rigorous exercise, late at night, or at least 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. That just again then impacts negatively on your sleep. We basically need to relax and get your body to have a good night's rest and good sleep, because sleep is vital for our body's recovery. Taking a hot bath before going to bed can also help one relax, and ensuring that there is no light in the bedroom. Make sure that it's dark, because even the smallest amount of light will impact on that, on your pineal gland, that will in actual fact then negatively affect your sleep. You may not realize it, but it is in actual fact, it's affecting your sleep at the end of the day. There's a very good book by Prof. Matt Walker on why we sleep. And in that book, he goes through a lot of these things and actually goes into the science of it all, showing us just how important sleep is. And just to our general health and recovery, it's absolutely important to get a good night's rest. Artificial light can actually make you gain weight, believe it or not. Melatonin is something which, as I say, if you ensure that you have sufficient melatonin levels going into sleep at night, it activates the brown fat, and that helps reduce and burn calories. It secretes hormone that support metabolic health. So a lot of people who find that they plateau or not able to lose weight very often find that it actually is related to this and to sleeping. Most people also eat for almost 16 hours of their day. We need to try and eat in a window of 8 to 12 hours to enable our body not only to maintain its blood sugar levels, but also enabling the melatonin to kick in later at night, because eating right throughout the day and right to before we go to bed does not enable us to produce sufficient melatonin at night. And it also impacts on our carbohydrates going through into the night, and can lead to things like obesity and type 2 diabetes. As the sun sets with the on a daily basis with the SCN, it begins to wind down our daily activities like eating. It reduces the cortisol levels and it increases the melatonin levels. Our metabolism slows down as we get through into the evening, and all of these things, if you don't enable our body to function properly to its circadian rhythm, can all lead to weight gain and associated illness with that. It can also increase the time, if you're eating late, to having food in your small intestine, and that leads to poor gut health, and this increase in growth of small intestine bacterial overgrowth, which a lot of people experience things like, the bloating and gas and other gut issues, very often related to this kind of thing. The other thing is at night, we are also less insulin sensitive later in the day, and that in itself, by having our circadian rhythm interfered with, can in actual fact lead to diabetic syndrome. So there are a lot of these things that contribute without us actually really understanding and realizing where a lot of it's coming from. The thing like the development of the belly fat, the increased elevation time of sugar around going through the night into our sleep, causes a lot of this chronic inflammation. And that's what causes a lot of the damage to our bodies and illness that we experience. Again, as I say, it's things we often don't think about or really realize. We need to get into good habits at the end of the day that, you know, are vital both with our eating and our sleeping, because another hormone that's involved here related to the circadian rhythm is the growth hormone. And this is one that normally increases at night. And it's important as an anti-aging thing for proper collagen formation, having healthy, lean muscle mass, for healthy cognitive effects, and also the role in all the rejuvenating aspects of good quality sleep. We need to make sure that we enable these things to work properly. And that's important, that you have the reduction of the light at night. You're not eating all of these foods at night to enable the body to do the work that it needs to do through your sleep. When we eat late, we have increased insulin, which directly opposes the growth hormone production. And that obviously then increases these negative effects that we've spoken about, like aging and poor skin condition, gaining of weight, and also negative cognitive effects like the Alzheimer's, other forms of dementia and Parkinson's with that DNA damage. It's, again, a thing that we need to be aware of and try and avoid, because that's what will make us healthier for longer in our lives. So it's not only important what we eat, it's actually important when we eat. And that's, you know, related very strongly to the circadian rhythm. There was a study done by this Dr. Sachin Panda, who did an experiment with mice, where, you know, mice normally eat at night. And what he did is that he gave two different groups of mice the exact same amount of calories and food, but the one group he only allowed to eat in a 12-hour window, and the other group he allowed to eat throughout the day whenever they wanted to. Those that were allowed to eat for the 24-hour period right through had both weight gain and the cardiac disease factors increased. So very much related to the circadian rhythm, and pretty much of what we've been talking about up to now was actually proven there in mice. So some of the key takeaways that we can put forward is stop eating early in the evening, at least 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. And if you can have anything to drink, you know, water or some of the non-caffeine containing teas are things that you can still drink if you need to. The study also showed that, you know, time-restricted eating early evening meal reduced the risk of cancer and improved our blood pressure and also the blood sugar, leading to better and longer life expectancy. So it's important when you actually eat. We need to do this to prevent poor digestion, fat gain, aging, and cancer risks. Our morning meal, we should try and eat a little bit later, because, you know, having that overnight window where we've given our body the opportunity to recover, but then we also take advantage of the fat burning early in the morning by not having early meals of carbohydrate. If you're going to have anything, have a protein meal and just allow your body to take advantage of the overnight melatonin and cortisol, which will act as a fat burner at the end of the day. Early morning cortisol increases, and it in fact helps the breakdown of foods and helps burn more fat. We get into this what we call the ketone mode when we wake up, and that in actual fact teaches our body in a different way to use the you know, what we've got there. Instead of it'll burn the carbs off instead of you know, using fats and so on. So that's a far better way to do it. We need to get into a routine and stick to it, our eating and our sleeping routine. Chronic stress is something that we need to try and avoid, because that just causes fat build up at the end of the day, and also plateauing when we're trying to lose weight. Chronic stress also causes this skinny fat syndrome, which is, you know, when our cortisol is chronically kept high. You know, we generally, when we are stressed, we reach for carbs, and the excess cortisol around increases the insulin and eats away at our lean mass and leads to excess fat storage. And this is a dangerous type of fat because it's a visceral belly fat and also the fat that surrounds our organs and increases the risk of diabetes, heart disease, and brain shrinkage at the end of the day. So how do we change this? As I say, we've spoken about this daily fasting of the, window. Eat 12 hours in the day, give yourself a good break overnight. Don't eat late at night, 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed. Stop eating and try not to eat 2 to 3 hours on getting up. And if you do, don't eat carbs early in the morning because that's what will cause the problem. So 6 quick tips as we come to the end of our presentation is that we need to denormalize sugar in our diets, remove sugars from our cupboards, read labels because we do not really recognize and understand just how much carbs there are in our foods that we eat. We need to eat a rainbow of foods and try and get 5 different vegetables of different colors. Just look for the different colors, and that's what we refer to the rainbow. Prebiotic, we need to have good bugs in our system, so we'll eat raw foods and they will help with your health, weight, and your mental well-being. Daily microfasts, we've spoken about that just in terms of this 12-hour thing. Give your body an opportunity to clean itself out through night. Let your body do the work that it needs to do while you sleep, and don't eat early in the morning, particularly not carbs. Make sure you drink sufficient water. Don't overdo it as well. A lot of people think that you've got to drink as much as possible. We don't need to drink as much water as is always said. 1.2 liters is very often enough, but going up to 2 liters and more, depending on your activity, is also okay. Unprocess your diet. Most of the foods that we eat have so many things on the label. Move away from processed food as much as possible and go to raw if you can. Sleep, improve your sleep routine, rise early and get the first lights, take advantage of the later in the day, of the dimming of the lights and good sleep, and make sure you have good circadian rhythm at the end of the day. So basically it's a lifestyle that we need to look at, not a diet that works. We need to be consistent what we do. We need to plan our meals. We need to shop for the right meals. We need to have available what is healthy to eat. Become mindful about what you are doing. And sometimes it's helpful to work with a health coach. So just in summary, and we mentioned them along the way, the Neolife products that we need to remember that are good, the magnesium for improved sleep, omega-3 salmon oil, which is anti-inflammatory for the cognitive diseases as well, is very important, and also for cardiac health. Carotenoid complex for eye health and sleep quality, containing the lutein, zeaxanthin, and the vitamin A derivatives. And then Pro-Vitality, which combines them all. It's got a multivitamin mineral, the carotenoid complex, omega-3, and threonine. So it's a complete combination that's very healthy for us to substitute with. And yeah, pretty much that's the thing. I'm not sure if there's things that have been learned in terms of circadian rhythm and just how important it is. There's so many benefits to it, which we take for granted. And so often these things that we are suffering from, and we don't realize what is in actual fact causing it at the end of the day. So yeah, hope that's been helpful. And thanks very much.
Thank you, Bob. As we finish off, really appreciate all the information. I've written down a very long list of new vocabulary. And thank you for all the good advice there, and particularly when it comes to using our Neolife products to supplement when we're not getting enough of the right foods. Thank you. Can we switch off the recording, please?